scary morning or magical midnight, wherever, whenever you may be, across the dimensions or around the vibrations. I'm Tillie Treadwell, and oh, have I got a show for you. Won't you join us on The Weird Walk Home? But yes, I'm definitely into the paranormal. Your book, The Deception of Gods and Men, I recommend that book to everyone that I get a chance to now because it echoes a lot of the sentiments that I had discovered myself
Hmm.
over living essentially a magical lifetime, you could say, just being born, these non-human people being attracted to me, but then also working with the Catholic Church and
Hmm.
vetting and being part of their exorcism team. A
Yes.
lot of the things were just absolutely consistent with what you said. And
Hmm.
from my point of view, to have a book by a world renowned investigator which says the exact same things is just completely invaluable to me. It's a precious
Well,
material, in my
thank
opinion.
you. Thank you very much. It's kind of you to say. And a lot of this work is done by observation.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, we live in times where everything is so quick. We have to have everything now. And good science starts with observation. And
Yeah.
and we have to have the patience to sit back and watch and see the patterns and see the weaknesses,
Mm-hmm.
and its strengths. And it takes time to do that. The next book that Steve and I are working on leads on from The Deception of Gods and Men, and tracks the phenomena down to a geographical location. And that has really upped the the ante, as they say, up the stakes. And yeah, it's been a challenge to get to where we are now with this next book.
I actually, interestingly enough, am doing something very similar on my own YouTube channel related to specific areas. Greg
Mhm.
Ogles and I did a show about this somewhat recently,
Mhm.
and I started a scientific series called Meta Mechanics.
Mhm.
And that has to do a lot with like project doorway information. And part of that I'm going to be getting into soon
Mhm.
is more about what Greg and I were talking about,
Yes.
getting into different types of non-human peoples, where they typically live, what types of environments they prefer. And I'm thinking, at least on my side of things, I'm going to start off by talking about the haunted house that I just moved out of, because
Right.
there are different types of hauntings.
Mhm.
I'm sure you're aware. And it was the worst decay claim haunting I've ever seen in my life,
Mhm.
due to the landlords, not keeping up on
Right. Okay.
home maintenance. Have you heard of such a thing before?
Yes, I'm aware that that particular habit can definitely attract phenomena in. And sometimes we have to wonder, are they initially are the folks that are responsible for it, are they being driven down that particular path, or is this just something that lingers from their life across? It's a curious one, you know. And I see that the more the house starts to fall into pieces, if there is a haunting associated with it, the worse it can become.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it can be difficult. I've been researching the hauntings for a long time now, um, and seeing this pattern, and seeing where people can also develop problems within that particular environment, and
Yes.
that can magnify
Yes.
a lot of things as well.
All right, my friends. Today I thought that we could talk about what the paranormal has taught each of us potentially about the workings of reality around us. So, Steve, you're doing Project Doorway. I absolutely
We both do
love,
project. There's
Oh, both
Barry.
of you. Yes.
Yeah.
My apologies. I always see you talking when I do have the time to watch it, so I apologize. I had only associated it with you. But both of you then. Project Doorway is one of the best series I have personally ever seen, in my opinion, on the paranormal. It lines up, I would say, 99% of the way with everything that I have seen, been told, experienced myself. And I think that this is information that deserves a lot more attention. So I'm hoping. Did you hear me talk about the conference that I was invited to come speak at?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
a big part of the presentation that I'm putting together is based on information such as what you two are providing in Project Doorway, the old fashioned fairy tales, how it relates to the UFO disclosure movement, and then how all of that meets reality, philosophy, and humankind. So, bravo, work with that. I think it's about time, that this all comes out.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's taken a long time. I mean, Barry's, what, I dare say 36 or 38 years into the
Mm.
subject. Myself, 41. And I think you have to do that time. You have to really put in, I mean, it's not just, I mean, it's never forgetting that we're trying to advance our knowledge of the subject. And most people drop aside and just are happy to where they maintain and stay there. But
Mhm.
for us, it's never been enough. It's always like, well, we got to find out. We need, the ultimate questions is what the hell is going on? Where's it coming from? Why does it do what it does? And those gnawing questions, it forces us to try and sort of push through the boundaries. And believe me, there are a lot of obstacles and a lot of things where you think, that's it. I'm going to throw the towel in because you get frustrated and you think, okay. And then you go away and you think about it and you think, okay, well, let's look at it this way or look at it that way. And I think the fact that because Barry and myself have spent so much time in the subject and just going at it, trying to figure out what is going on, we
Mhm.
managed to get into a place now that is deliverable of answers which have been there, but are not easy to find
Yeah.
because dealing with a phenomena that's very, it's very um, it evolves with us.
Yeah.
It's very deceptive in some cases and knows how best to hide from detection. So I think like Barry's done and myself is changed the methodology of how we might have to investigate because if it's not working, you can't keep at it. If it's not working, you got to throw it aside and you got to kind of okay, what's another approach? And eventually, you start to get places and get answers to some of the things that really are probably the most perplexing in the subject of our reality.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I really like your approach, my friend, because you're not going in there trying to blow things up like Travis Taylor or being violent in that way. You're using lasers and scientific instruments purely. And it seems like you take a lot more of a respectful approach. At least that's my understanding. And it seems like you get more answers. At least that's my understanding. What do you think about that, though?
It gets very complicated when you start investigating a phenomenon that does not want to be discovered.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
and it doesn't matter which technology you're using, we will be played by the phenomena. And we've seen this within the world of the paranormal, especially when we consider these little devices that are checking for various different signatures, and they've got flashy lights on them, and they believe that if a spirit's coming close, it'll produce this light or sound, whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
But this is being used countlessly over and over and over in the investigations. What are we learning from that? Absolutely nothing. Nothing. Because all the phenomena, all of the phenomena can manipulate all of the instruments that we're using. So
Right.
that can cause problems.
True.
There are ways in which we can um, step outside of the box and remove ourselves from being directly connected. And then by doing that, we're able to get the answers. In other words, you're fooling the phenomenon, but you have to do it in a specific pattern. And that is if you step outside of that particular route, the game's up, and you might as well go home for the rest of the night. And the phenomena, it really does, it works almost like a magician. And Steve and I have seen this time and time again. Look at this hand, don't watch that hand.
Don't look behind.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and time and time again. But
Sure.
again, this is a problem when you've got a phenomena which, in its own right, is intelligent, uh, but it does not want to be discovered, and that's where the problem lies. And even when we think, we see this again time and time again in various different fields, where contact is made, and we start pushing back with the phenomena to say, okay, we have made contact. You tell us you are who you are, or whatever you are. Okay, now here's what else we need to know to confirm who you are. The
Mhm.
more that we start pushing back, the more the phenomena gets the hell out of there. Because if it detects that we are suspicious of its identity, we won't fall for the ruse, then it's gone. It does not want to be discovered. And
Yes.
and my big thing is, and this is something I continually repeat, if we have got and communicating with something that is there for our positive stepping forward, if it's there to help us, if it's genuinely there to help us, it's not going to mind a few questions for clarity.
This is
Nine
very
times out of
true.
10, they don't. They
Mhm.
do not want you to question that.
This is true. I would like to say, with some of my own encounters, these non-human people have disclosed to me that some of them are not trying to be slippery because they purely don't want to help people here, but because there are apparently, this is allegedly, there are certain blocks on what they can tell human people because they don't want to interfere too much in the incarnation of those people because it would take away certain aspects of the human journey and human free will. I don't know fully what all that means, and I don't know how true that is. However, I do think that it could be something to perhaps consider in some investigations because there may well be limits that they have to follow in order to interact with human people. It might be karmic or it could be something else. I don't really know. I just think that it's worth considering. I also think that, too, it's much wiser, perhaps, for human people to put more stock in cooperating with people who are actually here and like have skin in the game, if that makes sense. They're incarnated, they're here, they're, physical. And it seems to me like that type of cooperation and collaboration has a little bit more freedom, philosophically, karmically, whatever the case may be. What do you think about that possibility, my friend?
Hmm.
Steve, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, please.
it's interesting. I mean, the problem is that through the experiments that have been conducted over the years, and some of many of
Sure.
them are involved in, when it comes to communication with whatever these things are, I think the terminology is non-human intelligences now.
Right.
They've demonstrated to us that a high level of deception through
Mhm.
experiments to the point of being able to maintain a circle, to be able to ask questions. When we were told we could ask questions, we went to deliver 10 questions to them, and they answered all 10 before
Mhm.
we even posed the question.
Sure.
So they obtain the information from us, to deliver to us. So it's very difficult when it starts getting, when people going to see psychics and mediums. Now, the mediums or psychics, not saying they don't have any ability, I'm sure they do. They tap into the source. The source gets the information from us, provides it to the psychic or medium, and that's delivered to the sitter. the person who's gone in there to find out if their uncle or auntie's passed away, who's got some information for them. And when they deliver something to them, and that person sits there and thinks, well, the psychic or medium could not have known that.
Mhm.
Therefore, it must be my uncle or aunt.
Not
However,
true though.
that's not actually the case because once we discovered this, it threw all that out the window in regarding parapsychological stance, in regarding evidence of the afterlife. In fact, this is why parapsychological departments will still hold their hands up and say there's no evidence for the afterlife. Because what they're not saying is that, oh yeah, there's plenty of evidence of communications. But if you just measure, even if it's a low level of deception, then how are we ever supposed to know what's the truth and what isn't? And this is what, this is a big problem for us when we're dealing with these, these intelligences. And like Barry said, sometimes they will say they can't answer that. They'll actually tell you we can't answer that, or we
Right.
won't answer that question.
Mhm.
Sometimes they'll tell us something which is just not true.
Mhm.
So we can go ahead and do the research and prove that that the information was incorrect. And sometimes it's like they've been caught red-handed, as if there's a hierarchy sometimes, and it seems like something else comes in to the communications, and all the original communication we're having just completely stops. It's just like,
Sure.
and you get this impression it's like the naughty kids have been, they're not supposed to talk with us, and they got kind of found out. I mean, but it could just be a stage act at the end of the day,
Uh-huh.
just to kind of just mess with our heads. One thing is that we've discovered since doing all the research is that how manipulative this phenomenon can be,
Mm.
how it can utilize us in every given sense, psychologically and physically. And
Yes.
that's a massive problem because we're relying on information being accurate and precise. And we've got to try and measure that. I mean, just an example, when we conducted tests in regarding people who had spirit guides,
Mm.
and they were established with them for quite a number of years, and we asked, can you deliver information about who are these spirit guides? Surely you must have asked the question, who are these spirit guides? And of course, he obtained information. But when myself and Barry's done research in regarding, how truthful are they? In fact, they never existed. They didn't work where they said they worked. It wasn't their name. They never lived where they said they lived. They didn't die the way they died, and all sorts of different things. And it's actually what was interesting is that when they got told about this, they went back and pressed their spirit guides to sort of say, look, why are you not telling me the truth? Why did you tell me this and tell me that? And the response was, well, do you want to continue communications, or do you just want to ask questions? And at that point, they don't want to lose the relationship they've got, so they don't press it. If they did press it, as Barry would say, they'd take a step back and you probably wouldn't get the answer. So, you always got to question the validity of what is being said.
I completely agree with what you are saying. Um, what I am presenting to you, my friends, is a very small portion of non-human people, in my experience. The ones who say, I can't tell you that. If that
Mm.
is the final answer and then they leave and they don't continue to interact, those, in my experience, are the ones who are typically trying to genuinely help humankind without the storytelling and the manipulation. However, most of them, from what I have experienced and understood, like to play games, mind games, a lot of the time with human people, because there's no like polite way for me to really say this. A lot of them, in my experience, have told me that they say that they see human people as inferior, as cattle, as food sources, or breeding stock, or entertainment. And I personally don't like that. I think that it is cruel. And this is why I think that your work is so important, because I do genuinely believe that there are great non-human people either living amongst the human population and or in higher dimensions who come here occasionally and they want to help. But how do you sort that out exactly? And even the ones who say, I can't tell you that, or they give you truthful information, because you can't interact with them like directly most of the time, it becomes a great challenge to figure that out. And most human people are not taught how to use strong logic. And I'm not saying that all human people are dumb or anything. I just think that there needs to be a lot more education, like what you're talking about, so that people can become safer and wiser when they are encountering things like spirit guides, hauntings, mediumship, the fairies, because there are lots of different types of fairies, lots of different types of aliens and orbs, and maybe even hybrids and whatnot. Does that make a little bit more sense?
It's interesting what you're saying there. I hear that you're saying we need to be more cognizant
Yeah.
of what we're dealing with, which is very left hand brain driven. The problem that we live in a society now, which is designed to keep us within that left hand drive. We use cell phones and everything today, which in itself locks us into that left hand brain. It's designed to keep us from the right hand, which is where our instinct, our gift of discernment lies. Now, that policy of keeping us locked in the left hand brain is problematic, because a lot of this phenomena, a lot of this phenomena that we're dealing with, we need to be able to access that right hand, that instinct, because the gift of discernment is our first line of defense when we're dealing with something. And don't get me wrong, I am saying that there are positive encounters out there. Project Doorway would not be there without those positive encounters. Now, we have learned from those positive encounters and interactions, but we have also learned a huge amount from the negative aspects as well. And people will say to me, well, is there a spirit? And I said, yeah, from my own personal opinion, yes, there's a spirit. But I don't have an issue with the spirit. I have an issue with this other stuff that's causing trouble on this particular plane of existence that we're on. And for that, we need to have a balance of the right and left. And we see this even from shamanic perspectives. From a male shaman, they needed to be more balanced with the feminine and the masculine. And likewise, from the feminine aspect, they needed a certain amount of masculine as well in there to create that balance, and the universe itself is based on balance. So we needed to try and establish that balance. We live in a society now which is heavily driven to the left-hand side. It's driving us to understand everything around us, the pens, the cell phones, the cameras, everything else. And even during an investigation, when it's preloaded with so much technology, it's locking us into the left-hand hemisphere. And that in itself is keeping us from making that connection to the right and hearing and getting those impulses to let us know when there is something there, genuinely there. And never mind that, but when you consider as well that the food that we consume also affects the way that we respond to that. And now people will say to me, well, what's your best piece of equipment? I am. That is the best piece of equipment that I have. I love cameras and everything else. Don't get me wrong. I love the technology, a certain amount. But I go into an environment understanding what I have consumed, how my body is responding to that, and picking up on the signals that I'm being given. And that is very, very important to understand that. When we've got folks who are meeting in a group of folks who are meeting in for instance, a fast food restaurant before they go to an investigation, and they have, I don't know, a glass of soda, the refined sugar within the soda can actually shut down that gift of discernment. So
Yes.
we're going into a situation in which we are blind. Therefore, it doesn't matter what appearance it takes, it doesn't matter what it tells us, we cannot discern that. In other words, we're blind.
I agree with you, my friend. And if I may, when I said logic, I did not mean only the left brain. When I say logic, I'm talking, this is just me personally, I'm talking about using nutritional science. I'm talking about potentially using the equipment, your brain as in your ability to think about the literal words or communications that someone is using, and also your instinct. So I do apologize for that. I definitely should have been a little bit clearer, but I agree with everything that you said. And I have a small consulting business on the side. The biggest part of my consulting business is helping people break addiction to sugar, to refined carbs, to the heavy sodium foods. And sometimes I do work with paranormal investigators. They say, what is wrong with meeting up with my friends for a fast food meal, having fun, and then going out? And this is literally the same exact things that I explain to them. So you guys are overseas, and that's probably a bit healthier for you, honestly, because America is going through a serious obesity problem right now. And there's also insulin resistance that comes with that. There's the non-genetic type of diabetes that come with that, so like type 2 diabetes, adrenal fatigue comes with that. And all of these issues shut down your body's paranormal antennae. And that makes it a lot harder as well for people to be able to listen to the literal words and concepts that a human person, like a teammate, or even a non-human person is communicating. That completely, in my opinion, removes free will, because that person is running on an addiction instead. It shuts down the fear response. It shuts down internal instinctual logic is what I call it. And I've come across a lot of people, at least here in America, who have these addictions. They go out into the paranormal field, whether it's a haunted like chateau, or whatever, it's a haunted house, or it's out in the middle of the woods, and they say, I had these horrible paranormal instances. I didn't see it coming. There's no way anyone can predict any of this. And then they come to me for help because they know that I have experience with this. And I explain, actually, here is how you should fuel your body before you go out. And here is what to look for to leave. And a lot of people, at least here in America, they don't like to hear that. But what is that like over in your neck of the woods? Do people respond differently over there to that type of nutritional advice?
I think
paranormal?
obesity is something which is starting to show its ugly head in certainly Western Europe, and that, of course, is a reflection on the likes of trans fats and corn-fed diets and things like that. So those will have their impacts, and it's unfortunate. But there is still a lot of people who can, at the moment, can still afford to create their own food at home, and know they cook it from scratch. They know what's going on to the dinner plate and things like that. That still occurs. Unfortunately, nowadays, it's very rare that you get a conversation around the dinner table because everyone's on their cell phones as they're eating, which is another problem as well, of course, but doesn't directly affect what we're talking about with obesity. But yes, the body is our first line of defense, and we have to understand that. With the work that we have done on Project Doorways, what's out in the mainstream now is in the public domain. There's certainly by far in our rear view mirror, far in a rear view mirror, because where Project Doorway is now is it's something completely amazing, and something that we're still trying to understand. What do we do with this information? So that's where we are with it, because it is quite startling what has been discovered. And so we have to work on that. But with Project Doorway, what we do want to do is to create and we have created these lectures in which we can share the information, and there will be occasions when we will be able to turn off the cameras and say, okay, folks, this is what else we found. Because there are occasions in which the phenomena does kick back, and has kicked back. In fact, both of us have experienced that firsthand, and there are things that need to be spoken about, but spoken about behind closed doors, and folks can watch out for that then.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the work that we've been doing now for only 9 or 10 years now, the stuff that is out is, like Barry said, is the people think it's, it's really current. Well, it's current compared to kind of the other general work, but it isn't for us because we've evolved so much further down. We're in the more the advanced studies now of Project Doorways research, which we're currently working in. But even from 10 years ago, the information we started to come out because we kind of, even about 8 years ago, we said about the changes in the narrative. We said about, that the certain people will be utilized to try and deliver certain narratives. There'll be an
Yes.
effort, at disguising it. This is where we are at the moment. The narrative change and gone from ETs to NHI and, the
Yeah.
thing for different things like that, and people utilized usually in, through very large media sources or through the Pentagon government programs, or even congressional hearings.
Hmm.
We knew all that, some years
Oh
back,
yeah.
what was going to be happening, but we did put it out, and now people are living in that. They're sort of seeing it happen now, and lucky for us, it's we've waited 8 years, and now it's here. We kind of go, okay, so it's illuminated, obviously, the research, because a lot of people are looking, oh, right, so if it isn't that and it's something else, what
Hmm.
is it? And when you go to look in that area, you find, obviously, Project Doorway. But the thing is that let's make it clear that, we might be at the pinnacle of the public domain in regarding the research, but this sort of stuff, it's already been going on in the private sector. And we know this because we have people reaching out to us from that private sector, asking us questions like, are we involved with MI5 and how do we know this information? Did Kit Green tell you that? I know Kit Green is one of the real big hierarchies of these programs for the government. Just and yet people are talking and got contacts with other people and say, oh, I mean, we're aware that they're aware of our work. And I kind of sort of saying, look, well, we know someone was going to get there eventually. But the thing is, we're in the public domain, so we will share information where their research is in the private sector and won't go out because it has to be, I guess, delivered in a manageable way. And can it be utilized for their reasons first before the public domain get their hands on it? I think as myself and Barry, the part of doing this research is about, advancing the subject, advancing our knowledge and moving the studies forward. And to do that, you've got to share to some degree.
And you
Yeah.
also have to get your feet out in the field, and that's something that Steve and I have done for a long time, and which includes even going to the United States into the high desert and having our encounters there with the
Right.
phenomenon, and and understanding the research that we were going with to that particular point, and understanding when the phenomena appeared over our heads, and was doing what it was doing. We were already well aware because of that instinct, that gift of discernment, that was the illusion,
Yeah.
and there's already something on the ground that we needed to be more aware of. And by understanding those particular components, we're able to break it down through those experiences. Now, I've had many experiences with the likes of the night attacks and things like that, and I've been able to break those attacks down and look at the phenomena, to strip it apart and say, well, where's the weaknesses? Why was this happening? Why did these people have these attacks more so than others? And we can also see the effect that the paranormal can have on the biology. and what it's doing to the biology and how it affects that. And specifically now within the deeper layers of Project Doorway, why is it doing it? What particular component within the body is it manipulating? Now we know. So it's a very, very different kettle of fish as
Mhm.
to what the where we started out.
Mm.
But by no means, it's certainly not changed any. It's the same phenomena, but we're just understanding it differently now,
Of course.
and seeing it for what it truly is.
Yeah.
I
And
would like to, oh, I'm so sorry.
it's
Please
quite
go
all
for
right.
it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I would like to say I agree with both of you gentlemen about certain material being censored or withheld for a while, especially if there are specific parties involved who have high stakes in the political system or what have you. Even myself, I've been approached by some pretty high up people because of the people I have on my own support team. They found out from a friend of mine, and they would come to me and say, "Hey, I'm so and so. I'm with the government, or I'm with this project, and we want you, and we want you to change what you're doing on YouTube. We want you to change what you write and how you present. And if you do it, this is what you'll get." I'm not interested in that. I don't care about that. I just want, for example, what you gentlemen are doing to come more to light because I genuinely believe that it is a lot more in line with objective reality here and elsewhere than almost anything being pushed in the mainstream. And it really bothers me that the agendas are being pushed and set this way instead of it just being a collaborative effort to bring out the truth. So I would like to, for my audience, verify that what these gents are saying about those type of agendas, it seems to be true in my understanding and experience.
Um,
Beyond that, oh, please continue.
I find it pretty unique in that you have rejected the advances of certain parties when you become identified. Especially now we live in an environment in which life is getting very tough for many, and for an opportunity like that to come along, there's going to be a lot, especially after lockdown, who would be very quick to say, okay, I'm going to go with this. And like you, I have been in that situation where I have been
Yeah.
invited to a dinner, and I have
Mhm.
a lot of money has been put across the table to say we want to sponsor your projects, but you will have to toe the line. At which then the dinner was over immediately, and I left. I will
I
not
didn't
toe
even
the
get
line.
that far. I don't care. I shut it down. Okay, so for me, I have spent my entire lifetime building a life that I love. I am very strategic, and I don't think 6 months or a year down the head. I think in terms of decades and hundreds of years and even further. So for me, I have spent my life surrounding myself by people who love me, support me, and I broker deals with those people as
Mm.
individuals,
Mhm,
completely outside of the paranormal realm.
mhm,
So I have everything that I could ever need or want. For example,
mhm,
my hubby, he is the breadwinner. Anything that I do is extra. He makes phenomenal money on his own.
mhm,
I helped him set up his career. I own half of every one of his businesses because of
mhm,
that. And we just moved into a really nice camper as a small home base here, and then we're going to go ping ponging around the United States as we wish, starting in a few months,
mhm,
because we have planned so well and because we are a solid team. And then the other people on my backstage team, we also have specific deals. We support each other in every way possible. So for me, if I were to take those other kinds of deals just for like the fame or the money, first of all, I don't want to really be famous.
mhm,
I'm doing this because I genuinely care about humankind. I
mhm,
could live a life of luxury on my own
mhm,
and not have the dangers of fame, but I'm doing it because I care. Second of all, money. if I have all of the money in the world, what does that really change for me? Because I already have everything that I want and need. And then I would have the guilt on my conscience of essentially, making a deal with the devil. I don't want to have that guilt. I don't want to have that shame. I don't want to be controlled, manipulated, even if there is money. And we all die some point. So I can't take that blood money with me, you know?
As we say in Ireland, there are no pockets in a shroud.
Yes, absolutely true.
Um,
Coffins don't come with pockets either.
No, I mean I mean, I think it's about finding as much as we possibly can about
Mhm.
phenomena and sharing it and trying to advance it, because we've got to devise a system where people are going to continue to do the research because it's such a task. It could take a lifetime, if not more than a lifetime, to try and even reach to a certain endeavor that you might, think you're happy about. Gaining the full picture, though, I mean, I don't know if we'll ever get that, but we have to do it in small areas. And the first thing we have to do is work out what the limitations of this phenomena have, if it has any,
Yes.
because really it ticks all the boxes as godly power, to be honest with you. So you can easily identify this being something that could have been mistaken for the actions of deities, um,
Angels.
angels, and many
Mhm.
other things.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Many masks. And the problem is that it's been us. I think the humanity, spread across the world, with diverse interests and diverse opinions and ideas, different names for things, different ideas that they represent. But if you take all the names away and all the referencing away and just look, as Barry said, you research the phenomena, it's the
Yeah.
same. It's the same phenomenon. It's just multi-complex in regarding how it delivers itself to human societies. Sometimes it might deliver certain aspects of something visually because it's easy within the public mind if it's there, if it's on the edge of our consciousness on a regular basis. If you take the alien grey now, the image of alien greys are everywhere. They're on computers. They're on television every day. You can't switch the internet on in this subject and without seeing an image of it. It's in the forefront of our minds. And I think that's an easy path for them to say, oh, let's deliver what is the common thing. If you start to go back, you start to realize that the common denominator of how long these entities, the specific types, were around were very short. All right, so you got a little bit less with the Space Brothers, and then you start going further back, and you get little pockets. But
Right.
now the most sustained one has been the grey
Mhm.
because it's just generally in the public domain. Now, don't get me wrong; these things can appear to be very physical in nature because it's a metaphysical phenomenon. They have metaphysical aspects to them, and I've said many times that don't ever consider that if you see a strange craft in the sky, that it's a craft that's carrying the phenomena.
Mhm.
The craft is the phenomena as well. It's all part and parcel. So what we really are visually seeing or hearing might not ever be the case. I mean, there's been times when photographs have been taken. You're looking at something, you take a photograph, and that's not what you get on the photograph. So you have to question, okay, well, how much manipulation goes on and how much do we really know? Because we
Right.
start to look at limitations of, the just the complexities of what the capabilities are. Through communications, we've been taught, because you mentioned a little bit earlier about free will, and through communications, we've been given detailed, and I mean specific detailed information about what's going to happen in the future. And this has happened personally. I've experienced it 6 times. Every single time has been absolutely correct. And we're not
Right.
talking something mundane. You're talking about you are going to be in this country on this date doing this.
Yes.
You think, I would never, why would I even be there? I would
Mhm.
know. And it turns out that day you are exactly where they said you'd be. So you have to question about predestination and free will. Is reality and multiple serendipities happening to get us to that point, which is manipulated, or it's a set path and they're aware of it. we have to question the whole reality around how this phenomena is incorporating with this, with the reality that we perceive, should we say.
Right. I think it's a mixture of everything, to be honest. And I do think that a lot of these non-human people are attuned to objective and subjective timelines. And I think that they have access to this information. And I think that sometimes, I believe that there are different grades of these non-human people. Sometimes they may get it right because they genuinely have full access to it. And I think that the lower grade ones that are closer to the 3D realm, I think that they really do genuinely get it wrong sometimes because, in my experience and opinion, timelines shift. People, we all shift, especially if we're incarnate here in the 3D. It is my experience that we shift, and so our future can change at any point in time. So, say you're getting ready to go to work, and I hope you don't eat Hot Pockets, but if you eat Hot Pockets, one morning you decide to pop the thing in the microwave and have it for breakfast. What if that changes the whole course of your day? You know, and your day would have been extremely different had you decided to fast that morning. And so I do believe that certain grades of non-human people can pick up on that and certain grades cannot. But then I also believe that there are tricksters out there who are just playing with human people. But how can we discern that from the 3D? This is why I don't recommend that most human people mess around with who and what else is out there. I just think that it's very dangerous and unnecessary. And I think that it takes truly dedicated and brilliant and observant and healthy minds and brains and people to get involved with that, like you gentlemen are. Does
Well, I
that make
think,
sense?
yeah, I mean, you're right by saying, because you need to know, and Barry, it's Barry taught me this, when
Hmm.
to say enough is enough and get the
Yes,
hell out of Dodge.
yes.
Because in my earlier years, it was so exciting to have witnessed such phenomena on a regular basis through experiments. I mean, my whole life was like, wow, it's just opened up. What have I just experienced? And if it
Yeah,
wasn't for others around me, I would have never believed it. But you get excited, and I was, and I wanted to go back the next day and do the same and do the same. And
yeah,
over a period of time, it started like things happening at home.
yes,
We had to purposely cut it down the amount
yeah.
of interactions we were having so that it wouldn't cause. And you're right, I do believe there's some type of, I don't know, hierarchy, I could only sort of say, because sometimes what they're not very good at, and I would probably agree with this, is that this process of reverse psychology, such as occasionally when we're doing certain types of research, and that's been involving all sorts of very strange things from the past. Sometimes they don't seemingly don't like it,
Mhm.
and we get a slap on the hand. They kind of like a punishment. You get bad things that will happen, and suddenly a sudden eruption. But what they don't realize is that actually, like in a reverse psychology way, it kind of tells us, well, it's fueling the fire, so we must be onto something. They haven't quite.
Well, oh yeah.
Sometimes they don't realize that.
Well, what I
Um,
found is that a lot of these non-human people, they don't understand human psychology very well. So what seems to be happening, as far as I know, is that they're incredibly psychic. They usually have access to more than one timeline at a time, so they're really good at predicting certain things, but they don't understand the intricacies of how the human mind works and what you guys may be looking for. And so keeping those things secret is the best human defense or offense, depending on how you use it,
yeah.
in my opinion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a bit like
Yes.
what Barry says when you talk about your stuff you've done, Barry, regarding the identification of understanding the psychology of written word in regarding the
Mhm.
phenomenon.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
different.
Um, there is a certain risk involved for folks that do go out and openly try and approach the phenomena. We do have, as we have talked um, just moments ago about this conscious reality, this idea of what
Mhm.
we, the world around us at this particular moment in time. Um, that conscious reality during a true phenomena, an encounter with the true phenomena. And this is something we have to point out, not everything that goes bump in the night is a ghost. Not
Correct.
everything, not every light in the sky is a UFO. Um,
Correct.
the true phenomena, the amount of the true phenomena, the encounters that are happening is much, much lower than is being reported. But the problem is that when we become transfixed with the illusion, the way that it appears, we have a very short window. We have 20 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And that within that particular window, that's whenever we need to be working the best that we can work within the 20 seconds, because after that, the phenomena begins to manipulate the brain pattern.
Yeah.
And that in itself is very, very deceptive in nature, and how it creates a situation in which we are seeing something that is not actually there.
True.
And many times, as Steve has pointed out, anything can be manifested. Anything can be manifested, but we're not the ones manifesting it. And during Steve and I, of course, are very privy to the goings on within the old seance rooms of Europe, and when manifestation occurs of a hand, for instance, that should grasp one of the sitters, and the sitters then continue to follow the arm up until it gets to the elbow, and then there's nothing else after that.
Mm-hmm.
Anything can be manifested, folks, and this is the thing: anything can be manifested. We're not manifesting it, and this is the true phenomena that is manifesting it. And there are occasions as well, whenever it begins to get into your, it becomes very problematic, because a lot of the phenomena can be consciously driven, or subconsciously driven, in fact, in that it appears to be there when in fact it's not.
I have a burning question for each of you, my friends. Let's just say, I'm not saying that this is true. I'm just posing perhaps a hypothetical. What if there were like physical non-human people here amongst human society who were either hybrids or they were trying to live out a blended lifetime here amongst human people, and they were trying to do it as harmoniously and respectfully as possible, but they have biological differences that manifest within the energetic field, you could say, or the aura, or however you want to say it. And when they interact with human people, they don't realize what they're doing, but the interaction, getting physically close to the human people, what if that changes the brain patterns and the brain waves of the human people to a more favorable state, but the non-human person does not know that they're doing it because it is a biological mechanism? Would you morally hold that against that person, that individual, if they're not causing any kind of actual harm or violence? Like, is it morally reprehensible to you just for the fact that someone biologically may have that? How do
You
you?
see, you see, here's the thing. That's a great theory that you put forward there. But with a lot of Project Doorway, we've put a huge amount of work into it so that we can see the changes within the particular people. We've seen the brain pattern changes and everything else.
Mhm.
With that, there's a theory there, but that's all it is. It's a theory.
I agree.
How do you substantiate that theory into a reality in which you may alter your day-to-day living um, based on that particular theory? But what I'm trying to say is there more weight behind the theory that would cause us to actually look at that particular phenomena, because a lot of the phenomena that we've been seeing, that Steve and I have been encountering, within the 20-second rule that is called, that is a phenomena which it's purposely driven. It's not,
Oh,
it's not
okay.
something which is done by mistake. There is a purpose behind this. The fae, the fairy, the she, whatever you want to call them, they have many different names. They use the same phenomena.
So
Now,
you're saying that it's, from what you're studying, it's always purposeful, but so if it was just a subconscious mechanism for someone who was peaceful living here, you wouldn't necessarily hold it against them? Is that what you were saying? Or
Again, what we're looking at is something that we have been studying. It's something that we can record. It's something that we can register with equipment and things like that. That would be a hypothetical thing. And the problem is, within the world of the paranormal, there are millions and millions and millions of hypothetical scenarios that can unfold.
Okay.
We would literally get nothing done if we were to do that, and
No,
follow every single one of them.
I mean we recognize that the methodology of the brainwave alteration during, if you want a Bluetooth kind of thing with a phenomena, it's conscious connection observer effect. It's a bit like Bluetooth. The phenomena recognize its observers and makes a decision to interact with them. At that point, you've got very little time.
Mm-hmm.
Then the methodology of inducing cognitive limitation means that the things that you would normally do, your reactions to phenomena, take a photograph, pursue, run away, whatever, those cognitive limitations completely go out the window. And because afterwards you kind of think, well, why didn't I do that? I would have done this. I would have
I
done that.
hear
Why?
that all the time. Mm-hmm.
Because it grabs you. And I would witness things, and I wasn't even allowed to say anything until half a mile down the road. And it wasn't just me, because once I opened my mouth after what we saw, half a mile traveling down the road, the brakes got slammed on, and it was witnessed by others. But we weren't allowed to react at the time. It takes control of the process of how we cognate this and what we would do, how we'd react or act. And that's controlling, and that's manipulative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to say that there are many
Right.
times in which the phenomenon itself will target the particular individual before they even realize that there's anything wrong. Why is that person, why do they get the feeling that they need to go outside at that particular time of the night, which is an irregular behavior for them? What is it that it drives this person to move into an area in which they can be targeted in an easier way? And I know that there is this aspect in which, well, the people shouldn't really be going looking for this particular phenomena. The phenomena will pick you out whether you like it or not, and that is something that will happen, has happened, and will continue to happen. You could be sitting on a set of traffic lights, minding your own business in broad daylight, and boom, you get hit. And it's just knowing the signs, it's knowing what to look for, it's being aware of the phenomenon, the way that it interacts. The problem that we faced today is that we have a huge amount, as you've of course hinted at, we have a huge amount of people who are involved with institutions and large companies that are heavily invested in producing phenomena which is disguised under the true phenomena. That has muddied the water today.
Yeah.
Because people are thinking UAPs, UFOs, they're all coming from this other stuff. No, there's a huge amount of this which is black budget, folks, and there are ways to tell the difference, but it's becoming more difficult. Each decade that comes along is becoming more and more difficult. But yeah, as I say, Steve and I, we're in a situation now where we're a way down that road with
Mm-hmm.
Project Norway, and being able to understand the biology, being able to understand the phenomena, being able, in fact, even targeting where the phenomena is coming from was very important.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were always led to believe, there was all this stuff where they're coming from, the
That
Pleiades, yeah, the Pleiades and everything else. And
Yeah.
we were always being focused to look outward. Now, there's a pattern to this, especially from our ancient ancestral history, in which we can see that initially, of course, the great temples and hidden temples were always within the cliffs. They were on top of the mountains and everything else. But humanity started moving toward those areas. So the phenomena took a step back further and further and further. Now we're in a situation where the phenomena is telling us that it's coming from Pleiades and everything else. We can't reach there.
Right.
And we're continually looking up. when we should be looking more to our feet.
I agree. And this is why, for my mission, it's important to work with folks like yourself, because you're understanding that maybe this is more earth-based, or, this plane, whatever you'd like to call it. And you're seeing past, I do believe, the agendas being put out by people who are human and otherwise.
Mm.
So for myself, I believe in working from the inside out. Everyone that I work with, personally or professionally, I do everything that I can to approach him or her as an individual first, and to help better themselves, myself, and the community, beginning deep within each party, working outwards. And the reason that I posed the question to you that I did is because I personally believe that we live in a blended society, but there are non-human people here who typically try very hard to blend in, but they have, in my understanding, different biological mechanisms that human people would traditionally find terrifying or immoral or that type of thing, but that they can't help. And I understand you don't want to talk about hypotheticals. I can respect that. I would just like to let you know where I'm coming from on that, because of my own understanding, my own experiences. And it's perfectly great what you guys are doing. I fully support it either way. I was just curious about what you guys might have thought about that
Yeah.
biological ability. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it demonstrates that little, well, a long, long time. I mean, going back to ancient times, there's been, interaction with humankind in a very advanced manner. Where we have to question the genetic path of the human race and alterations and the strange differences. And it's, the more you study it, the more you come away thinking, well, we've been a project that seemingly has been doctored with and messed around with for a long time. And those and that can be induced through interactions with these non-human intelligences, because we see it, not just coming through from ancient times, but even in the modern era. It's the same phenomenon. It's still, they're kind of caretakers of messing about and interacting with humankind, sometimes steering history, making historical changes in,
Yes.
what they've been involved in. Sometimes, making certain changes or in society, not just in a physical sense, but in a psychological sense as well.
That's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And that is a massive thing. However, though that we do know that, we've gone beyond that now, because we accept the fact, okay, this phenomenon has been interacting with, it's age old. It has a geological connection, and it can interact with us at any given time, and the phenomenon is right under our noses. You can't deliver that in any form or any shape as a disclosure. Can't be delivered. What has to be done is generated like a make-believe aspect to it, and get people to focus over here, because the truth is over here. And what happens is when people start to see this collapses and another one's created. You're not getting to focus on it. And we know this from the circles that, from the people we talk to, the people that refer information to us, in higher circles of, the manipulation at government level to the
Mhm.
general people of the public of the world through the use of media outlets, the production of lies, counterintelligence plans, and all sorts of different things. It's just another illusion to keep us, though that occasionally, to keep the spark of interest, they have to do a 99% lie with 1% of truth. And that 1% will say, okay, well, the new narrative name is NHI. Okay, we'll go with that. And there's interdimensional aspects to it. We'll go with that. And that's all they're going to give us. Say that the ufology consists of most, more the paranormal and supernatural. That's as much as you'll get to keep the interest in the lie, because you
Mhm.
only have to give you some points to keep you interested in the lie. In the meantime, the true phenomena is still carrying on doing what it's doing and interacting, but in a sense where it has godly power and can create metaphysical and you know phenomena. It's it can create physical things. Because sometimes when they choose not to be physical, they're not. Sometimes when they choose to be, they are. You know,
Yeah.
it's how we interpret it. And someone at some point seemingly compartmentalized all these subjects so that
Correct.
the
Yeah.
paranormal guys would never figure out the full picture without getting into the paranormal and so on and so forth. But if you got to collapse those things to start making up a better picture, because there's been this ruse, and I don't know if it was generalized on purpose to have us look in a certain direction and not put all the points or dots together to try and work it out.
Mhm.
But that can't go on forever. The ruse of the extraterrestrial, they're coming from vast distances, they're traveling to Earth from other stars, which would mean we'd have over 4,000 to 5,000 varied entities coming from 4,000 or 5,000 different planets, and there'd be a superhighway of traffic passing backwards and forwards to Earth. That isn't the case. The
No.
phenomenon is manifesting in many different ways, and the specialists and ourselves realize there is no base model. The phenomena generates a base model depending on utilizing its surroundings, its current knowledge, and you. And it
True.
creates the base model. In 1977, Project Blue Book referenced over 12 million varied UFO phenomena. There's no base model for them. And this is what we're seeing today is that, because I've talked with people that have witnessed gargoyles. I've talked with people that have witnessed, strange creatures that shouldn't even exist, mythological creatures, things that just don't make any sense. But I understand there's a likely chance that they actually did experience them because I've experienced some of these things myself. I've seen some of these things myself, and they don't make any sense. And yet, there's no base model. So the phenomenon delivers in numerous different ways to the point where it's absurdity. It doesn't want you to connect the dots. So it manifests all these varied things because this person's not going to believe what that guy saw, and that guy is not going to believe what this person saw. And this is why, if you do the studies and you look, there's thousands and thousands of references all over the world. So you get rid of the mask, and like Barry does, where you look at the phenomena, and that's the true aspect there, because the phenomena doesn't change, but the mask is forever changing.
I agree. And so this is my take on it, my friends. I believe that life, everywhere, anywhere, wherever it touches, especially, is a giant tapestry of interweaving stories. And I think that the phenomena is the core component, absolutely. But I do think that there is a touch of subjective truth to it. So you believe that these people saw gargoyles, for example, and so that non-human person was taking on that form. They truly were a gargoyle at that moment, I believe. And so I hope that makes a little bit of sense. What I think is that we're all here living out all of these stories and that we take all of that information back home eventually when we pass away. So I think from a more philosophical point of view, this is just me. And so my friends here and in the audience, please make up your own mind. I could be mentally unwell. I could be mistaken. There's always that disclaimer. I think that we're just all here walking each other home and telling ourselves stories and telling each other stories. And I think that the non human people are fantastic at writing and living stories. And I think that that is especially the spark or the heart of God, for better or for worse, depending upon how you look at it. And in one moment, it could be subjectively really, really bad and unhealthy for like a human person who gets, say, physically attacked. I personally don't agree with that because I'm a lover, not a fighter. However, it does happen and it is a part of the story. And as Barry, my dear, you said earlier, you have learned from the bad things as well. I think that that's really important. So I kind of take a less judgmental stance about it because I'm just fascinated by by all of the stories, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I love a good story. I've just signed a book deal to write some paranormal nonfiction philosophical stories, original content from my own brain that I am thrilled about. And I've just signed a contract, and my audience didn't know this yet. Surprise, I'm going to be at a national UFO disclosure conference in October or November. And my subject is talking about the material in Project Doorway, generally speaking, but also about how the fairies, the fae, aliens, demons, angels, spirit guides and how they all cross with human beings and how the mask changes, but the message and the phenomena are still the same. Do you think that's fair to say, at least?
The one thing to bear in mind that that the phenomena that you've just or the entities that you've just spoken of are all from the same source.
Yeah,
they're not independent. They're all from the same source.
It's the source. You're not dealing with individualism here. You're dealing with a source that delivers individualism.
I don't necessarily disagree with that, to be honest with you. So, for example, myself, ever since I was a very small child, I was considered very, very strange. My family took me in to see what's going on with me. Why do I think differently? Why do I speak differently, interact differently? I was diagnosed at a pretty young age of having very low ego content and very low emotional content. So when I'm interacting with you, my friends, I am putting on quite a bit of a show. And I have a lot of creativity flowing within, but I'm very low in those other aspects. And so that can come off as quite strange. So I agree with what you're saying about it all comes from the same source, but there is the objective illusion of individuality. So it's kind of like you could say pet dogs or pet cats, they can develop more of like their human owners' traits and whatnot over time. I think that this stuff also develops alongside humankind, because from what I understand, human people are very high in solid ego content and emotional content and strong subjective content. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I can see where you're coming from. There are certain animals that we're aware of through the work that we've done that also share particular traits with the phenomenon that we share. Not all animals do. There's a small handful of animal species that do share it and have their encounters as well. But yeah, when we start getting back into that, the deeper we go with the likes of Project Doorway, well, then it becomes, yeah, things change, and it really does change your paradigm. The deeper that you go with it, and that's something that Steve and I have gone through, you know, trying to understand the phenomenon and using equipment to try and break it down and understand how it works and what it's doing. And that's where we arrived at this particular point in that. And I hope I didn't come across as being annoying or anything whenever I said, you know, a hypothesis is a hypothesis. But it's just the way that Steve and I work. We need, first of all, we need to see the phenomena, and then we start breaking it down. And there are different methods in which we do to break it down. And there are many, again, you know, many hypotheses and theories out there, and a lot of them are wonderful, absolutely wonderful, and there are many, unfortunately, which can be very damaging to humanity, if taken on, and they're in their to their fullest. But anyhow, that's where we are with Project Doorway, and I hope you were able to get something from it as well.
No, you come off as annoying at all, my dear. I promise. I love finally getting to talk to both of you. I've wanted to talk to you for years, to be honest. And so a big part of what I'm doing, I have a checklist of people that I want to to work with and talk to about these kinds of things. So even though you may not understand or experience or believe what I'm saying, just the fact that you're willing to listen to me at all, be open-minded to any degree. Maybe I can offer you something that will bear out in the future. That is my hope, anyways. However, even if none of that ever happens, I'm still learning a ton from this conversation. It helps me to understand where you guys are coming from, what you've seen, what you've understood. And I actually agree with like 99.9% of what you're saying. And I support that wholeheartedly. And I do hope that we can work together in the future, or maybe even just or hang out and talk off the record, because I think that could be enlightening as well. But you didn't come off as annoying. Neither of you did. I'm not offended. Like I said, I get nervous at times even talking to people about this. Because when I'm honest with people all the time, they get extremely judgmental. They get really upset with me, and I don't always understand why. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can understand why. I mean, it's very diverse, this subject. There's a lot of people in it. We know a lot of people in this. But we keep our heads down, we do the research, and there are lots of different views and different opinions. There's lots of fantastic stories out there. We see these at conferences that we go and lecture at all the time. And traveling the world and doing these lectures and things, you get to see a lot of very interesting talks, but not a shred of any evidence, unfortunately. So, and that's no good for us. We're too long toothed now, I have to say, to take that on board. We have so much gone further that we focus on the evidential stuff, because if we didn't, you can spend a lifetime, and literally a full lifetime, within the colourful story areas, and they're really fascinating, and interesting, but it doesn't deliver us any answers. And for us, it's about, well, what is the next step? Are we still all going to be happy with absorbing the fact that we've been given this ruse, for these lies for the last 70, 80 years about this phenomena? And are we going to be there for another 70? Because now we haven't got as many people coming forward and wanting to do what we've done. I mean, when we start in the 80s and stuff and start moving forward, who's doing it now? Well, most of the younger generation are too busy on the computer games and life and everything else to even get into this subject. There's been a narrowing down of interest in that, and that's basically because they don't, eventually at some point, they want to be able to manage this for their own reasons in the hierarchy and not be challenged by the general public. You see, and that's control again. And unfortunately, we're battling that control system, by delivering as much information as we can. And there's the evidence, go and find out for yourselves, because the phenomena, it does what it does, and people experience the same sort of things. All we've done is leveled the playing field. We've not brought anything, to say that, oh, don't believe this or don't believe that. What we're saying is that you get a consistent amount of information within this subject, but you also get a huge amount which is buried away under the carpet. And we're just always saying is, let's level the playing field. Let's call this phenomenon for what it is. Let's show for what it is. No bells or whistles attached. Let's just put it all on the table and digest it. That's what we've tried to do. And of course, some people it's hard, because you go to certain areas, and we've been there in the Bible belts of America,
Oh,
and and we've had the audience are in tears, because basically because we're trying to tell them that it's not all love and light. This phenomenon has never been all love and light, and just because you don't know about the other stuff, which has been thrown under the carpet and brushed aside and kept quiet, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So
right.
don't go out there and introduce your 8-year-old daughter to the phenomenon. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what
I
the
agree.
return will be. And of course, this is the problem. And it is so like that in so many different areas. Each and every areas have got their own belief patterns. So we're not out there to change belief. We just want them to take on board everything, the whole concept of it, and make their own minds up, really.
And we have to say that there are biological implications in which we do know of genetics that can interfere with responsiveness to the phenomenon. We do know the people who are responsive to it, and we know the people who are not. So what I have to say, and I've said this for several decades now, just because we go to the jungles of India and don't see a tiger doesn't mean there are no tigers.
It's
Amen.
true.
Yeah, and I support both of you in everything just about that you said. My only objection is that I do believe that there are some really, like you could say, good for humankind, non-human people who live and or visit amongst um, the human population and who are genuinely here to help however they can. That is my only argument. And I think that those people need to be vetted extremely carefully by humankind using any and every measure possible because it could get dangerous or dishonest really quickly.
There is no argument. Because we don't interact with, we don't bring that into Project Doorway because we know all that already exists. We're not blind to it, and we don't deter that. We're already aware of that. Those things do happen. People have positive experiences. People have interactions with people that are a little bit different. We get that. We know that.
But I wasn't sure if
don't get us wrong. Don't get us wrong. We know that, but how much further can we go with that without physically getting hold of one and start doing loads of tests? That would probably be illegal, to be honest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we can go as far as we can with that and say, okay, let's put that in its corner. We know that exists.
Okay.
But what else does? And what else is going on? And this is where our attention draws over to here. We know that's in its place. We understand that. But it's this area where we really focused in, because there are people that are having interactions on a more regular basis now because of the mindset and the deliverance of this. Is it a religion? Do you believe in the phenomena to experience it? Yes, believing is seeing, not seeing is believing. But it's manageable and it changes. And it changes because sometimes the phenomena creates a change en masse to deliver a bigger belief in its subject. So therefore, it's more prominent. You know, it's kind of it's a directly proportional phenomenon, so we say. But but we definitely are aware of that. You know, but we just can't go any further on a scientific basis. Further on, we have to put that there and say, okay, what else is going on? Because that's only one part of the picture. You know, so we're aware.
Okay. I'm happy with that answer. That answers most of my questions. I'm cool with everything you said. I agree with you. And yeah, all right. Well, I'm on board for the rest of it. I support you. If there's anything that I can do to help with that other stuff, I'm totally down for that. I mean, I might have some experiences that could support that or cases from the past, but thank you for clearing that up for me, my friend.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, we do have a number of deliverable lectures of the old ones. We've got like probably about 15, 20 of them, and now that we're going into the new ones. We have a UFO investigators training course. We have workshops on Project Doorway as well as the UITC courses. You know, so we're just trying to deliver the information as much as we possibly can, and just kind of trying to get the first stage of this educational process is to get them to think for themselves and not think what people have told them.
Yes.
That's the biggest problem.
Yeah. Oh, I completely agree. When I'm working with people, the biggest challenge even that I face is both teaching them how to think logically from, as Barry was saying, that more left-brained sphere, but then also teaching them about the nutrition and why all of their choices matter, especially, when it comes to the paranormal, because these people, I hate to say, it seems like there's a lot of arrogance that a lot of people have when it comes to this stuff, and they don't want to make any kind of changes. So then you can't give them the information because they're not ready to hear it. So what do you do? And that's often the catch-22 that I find myself in.
I remember hearing an interview with Malachi Martin. He was an Irish exorcist.
Ooh.
And it falls something onto what you were talking about there, and Father Martin was asked, "What do you do if you see someone that's possessed?" And he said, "I turn and walk the other way."
Mm-hmm.
And there are times that you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
That has happened a lot in my own field. When I was part of the Catholic Church exorcist team, I did vetting. So I have some history in the mental health field, studying clinically for a few years. I quit halfway through, honestly, though, because my superiors told me that most people don't actually want help. They just want benefits, unfortunately, and it really crushed my spirit. So I quit a few months later, but then I got involved in the paranormal scene. I was recruited by the Catholic Church, and they wanted me to be kind of like the first line for the exorcist team. I would go into people's houses, meet with these people who were allegedly possessed or having issues with demons and whatnot. Excuse me. And I would give them like a mental assessment, essentially. I would look at the condition of the home. There were a lot of times where I would make contact with the non-human people, and they would tell me, hey, this person that I am engaged with, that I am haunting, whatever you want to call it, their life is purposefully a mess. They don't actually want the help, and you're wasting your time. And if you actually, I'm sorry, if they actually want me to go away, here are the issues that they can fix. They need to stop like, for example, being a domestic abuser. They need to stop drinking and driving. They need to stop the alcoholism in general. They need to clean the house up. There are so many other things. And a lot of the time, the human people and families wouldn't want to hear it. And I was assaulted once because of that, sharing that information that I was not supposed to know, but I knew because I was told. I relayed it to the family in front of the exorcist team, and it was true. One of the members of the family verified it, but one of the problematic parents flipped out and threw a crucifix at me. It hurt like Dickens, and they were blacklisted, for example. But it's just a mess overall, in my opinion.
Exactly.
I suppose that's different to us over here. The church acts very differently over here in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and certainly the lay people wouldn't be granted access, the luxury of the access that you've been granted, to witness a lot of that stuff. We certainly wouldn't. The lay person wouldn't be allowed to view a lot of that, certainly from a European perspective. But that's the differences between different cultures and societies, and it's great that we can share those stories and see the differences.
I concur. All right, my friends. Unless you have anything else to add, I do think that we are all set for the day.
Okay, that's it for us. Yeah.
Yeah, glad. Thank you very much. It was enjoyable. You've got details of how you can contact us. So we've
Yes.
got all that. It's easy to find myself. Charmstealer.net is Barry's website.
Mm.
Yes.
Probably go.
Yes.
There's some details on there about Project Doorway and UITC and things like that.
Brilliant.
But the work is continuing and evolving. So we're hoping to have a book out next year, which is more the advanced Project Doorway stuff. So we're constantly busy, constantly researching, doing the work. But it is interesting times, and we are living those interesting times now. So which is good because I think people can start to make their own mind up about the
I,
phenomena without
I,
having to digest other people's material, or they can work it out for themselves if they're given the opportunity to see the whole picture. And that's what we're there for, to try and deliver the full
Mm-hmm.
picture.
Mm-hmm.
I am in complete agreement. And to my audience, I'm going to have links down below in the description box. Please kindly go and support both of these brilliant gentlemen. In my opinion, they have two of the most intelligent minds I've ever seen. And I support them wholeheartedly. I think that their work is crucial to the evolution of humankind and to potentially the evolution of harmony between all of the different branches of family. That is my hope, anyways. But until next time, everyone, thank you all for being here so very much. I appreciate you all. Until next time, I wish you a merry morning or a magical midnight.